Today, we have a guest that talked about music and mortgages and everything in between. We got Justin White here, and Justin has, I thought, a very, very interesting story and really wanted to focus on the aspect of taking care of other people as it relates to building goodwill. Not in a super selfish way, but in a strategic way to where someday those people that you took care of are going to take care of you and are going to be strong allies in your corner. And that, from what I've heard from Justin, that's what he has. I guess we'll find out if that's actually 100% correct. But Justin, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure.
What are you doing right now for a job?
Yeah.
If you could explain that for us.
It's always an interesting conversation because I think we've talked about this before where I've had to kind of craft exactly how I put it and how I explain it because it's a very unique situation. It's kind of a dream job situation. It's something that I've always kind of wanted to do. Mm-hmm. And now seeing it come to fruition is pretty special. And so what I do is entrepreneurialism, and it revolves around music and it revolves around business partnerships with my buddies. And
Gotcha.
So my primary work that I do is actually with my friend Jordan Keck of Advantage Mortgage. And so him and I went to college together back in 2010 through 14. His brother Tyler was in my hall.
Okay.
And we would always kind of dream up ideas of like, what could we do together? Like, what type of entrepreneurialism things could we do? And he went into his field of work, which was in the mortgage industry after college. And then I went into outside sales for a company that was called Industrial Finishes. But we'd always meet, we'd always connect and kind of have a conversation. We'd glean industry knowledge from each other, things that he was learning while he was building his business, things that I was learning as I was consulting businesses and helping them grow with what we used to call KPIs, which are key performance indicators.
Okay.
Well, anyway, 7 years into our careers, I was getting to a point where I was ready to make a switch. And so I call him. And during this time, I was doing a lot of writing too. So the music side of me, I was in Nashville doing writing. I'd basically save up PTO time so I could take a week to go to Nashville and kind of do those things and do gigs here and there and lead worship at my church. And Jordan and I had kind of always thought about like, what would it look like to work together? And where I could help you grow your business and you help me pursue music. And it's actually in Nashville, Tennessee, when we were on the phone with each other and we were writing it down on paper and trying to figure out what that would look like. And
Brad Paisley singing in the background.
I wish. Yeah, I do wish. I didn't have money back then, so I couldn't afford it. But it was fun because like when 2020 came along, I met with him.
Okay.
And that kind of became reality. We met at a Chipotle in Kaiser, Oregon. And I said, hey, I'm looking to make a switch. Do you know anybody? And he said, hey, why don't you come be my business partner? And so we sat down and we wrote out kind of my job description, what it would look like. And I got to partner with him. And we grew our company to about 12, 13 employees. It's called Proper Lending.
Okay.
And about 2 years ago, we sold and merged with Advantage Mortgage, so Derek Hill's company. And what's been really cool is, so basically I came on board with Jordan, helped him kind of develop some processes, management of the team, and then my primary job was networking him and connecting him. So real estate agents and companies that could be referral partners, essentially, is the way it was. So I basically helped him grow his business. He was also growing his business. And then coming into this last year and a half, we wrote in my contract that I was free to start venturing and pursuing my stuff, which is now in the music world. And so now I also am a full-time artist with my company called Justin White Entertainment, LLC. And that's where all my songwriting and my music lives, and getting ready to release an album. I'm signed with Compassion International and getting ready to actually go out and start pushing the music stuff at a little bit more of a professional level.
Nice.
Which is really cool. And so, yeah, it's kind of a long description, but basically I'm business partners with Jordan Keck and also a business owner with Justin White Entertainment, LLC.
So how long have you wanted to be a music artist? Is that something that you've always wanted to do?
Yes. Basically since I mean, even when I was in like 7th and 8th grade, my parents have videos of me with like a Garth Brooks mic and like the old white guitar that's like the kid toy,
Yeah.
with like the VHS tape of the Backstreet Boys playing in the background,
Oh, there you go.
pretending to be in concert. So yeah, I've always wanted to do it.
That's good. That's good. And were you working at moving moving towards that goal while, seventh, eighth grade, all the way up through high school and college? Were you looking at getting into the music industry?
I was.
Okay.
It's funny. When I entered so in high school, I was actually a part of jazz band. So I was a trumpet player in jazz band.
Okay.
So I did that. I was in wind ensemble, and I also did vocal jazz as well. So I got to go and play at a lot of cool places. So we got to play in a lot of jazz festivals, like up in Washington and Oregon.
Oh, nice.
Got to play in Disneyland. So I got to go backstage and be a part of that whole process.
Sweet.
And so I've always done performance.
Yeah.
We even got to do Pleasant Hill Jazz Festival, is one of the larger festivals in the Northwest, and we got to play alongside people like Mark Pender from The Tonight Show, who played trumpet, New York Voices,
Oh.
and so we got to get a taste of what it was like to be in those types of situations early on. And so when I got into college, I really wanted to figure out what I wanted to do. At first, I was like, well, I need money, so I'll be a dentist. Because I'm Justin White, so I was like, Dr. White would be a great, practitioner name for a dentist.
Right.
And I realized, actually, no, I'm better at like business and marketing. And at the time, I was trying to navigate, like, how do I make this happen? And I actually had a guy, his name was Soul Rexius. So he was with
Okay.
Caleb and Soul. It was a group that was kind of touring for a little while,
Oh.
kind of a local band. And I had met with Soul, and I remember him telling me this. He says, why don't you get a business degree? He goes, that's going to serve you so well, not only in life, but also with music.
Oh, okay.
And so I actually got a business degree at Corby University. And alongside that, I was a part of jazz band and worship arts and all of that as well. And
Wow.
so I was pursuing my entrepreneurialism class. I actually released an EP and sold t-shirts and kind of did that process. So
Nice.
yeah, I've been aiming to figure this out since literally my high school years. It's always been on my heart to do. It was just a learning curve.
Right. How long ago was that? High school for you?
So I graduated in 2010.
All right. So we're like 14 years into this
14 years into it, yeah. And just starting.
and just starting. That's amazing. That's
Yeah.
amazing. But you're not singing jazz now.
No, definitely not.
What genre would you put yourself in now?
So
I mean,
I-
I've listened to a couple.
Yeah.
Well, this morning while I was thinking about this interview, I'm like, you know what? I'm going to listen to Justin's music. I'd heard a few songs before, but I turned it on. I've seen your Spotify profile, but what genre would you call yourself, just for the people watching?
Yeah, absolutely. It's I call it CCCM,
Okay.
which is Country Christian Contemporary Music.
Okay.
And part of the reason why I did that is when I went to Nashville, everybody kind of talked about you need to pick your lane. That's kind of the idea, the concept. And so
Okay.
you either need to be CCM, which was Christian contemporary music,
Yeah.
or you needed to be worship,
Okay.
or you needed to be country. And it was separated. Those are the lanes. You can't cross. You can't do all these things.
We're not doing a music casserole here.
Correct. But then I sat back and I go, well, if that's the case, nobody's doing it.
That's a good point.
And so, and what was interesting to me is kind of sitting back, and I was always kind of balancing that line because I was like, how do I do that? Like, because
Right.
I was always a struggle for me. And then I started seeing guys like Florida Georgia Line doing crossovers with Chris Tomlin. And I started
did?
seeing, yeah, they did. They did some crossover. You saw Thomas Rhett do a song with Chris Tomlin. I mean, you're seeing country artists start to collaborate with Christian artists. And Chris Tomlin literally was with Reba McEntire at the CMA Awards in 2020.
Really?
And I started sitting there and I was like, you know what? I'm just going to dive full in from the start.
Yeah.
And my lane that I want to stay in is country Christian contemporary music. And the reason why I want to do that is that I want to write songs about my faith,
Right.
but I also want to write songs about life that maybe don't pertain to my faith.
Okay.
And I think that's kind of my idea behind it, is because I never want to be ashamed of who I stand for,
Right.
you know, and who I believe in.
Yep.
but I also know that that's also not everybody's, cup of tea.
Right.
And so I would love to be able to create spaces that people can enjoy music and have a good time. Or like if we're playing a venue, for instance, or I'm opening for an artist, I have a set list that can also show respect to those people that are doing those things.
Gotcha.
And so that's an important one. But at the same time, I also want people to know that I do believe in Jesus. Like he's my Lord and Savior, and I'm going to sing about him, and I'll be unashamed about it. But I'm not going to pretend like, I can't sing about this because, my gosh. No, we live life. We're normal people. I want to make sure that that's the line that I start from the very beginning, and that's the expectation.
So in country music, is there, I don't know how deep you dove into that industry or worked with people that work in like the country music genre, but like would they tell you to steer away from that? Like stay more into country, kind of keep the, I mean, yeah, you can sing about church and you can sing about mama's faith and all that, but would they tell you to steer away from like Christian, like I guess exclusively Christian music or a Christian song?
Yeah, it's from my understanding, and again, I can't speak for everything, but from my kind of interpretation of what I've experienced in the industry so far, is that I think it depends on your label, and I think it also depends on
Okay.
radio.
For people like me, what exactly does a label entail?
Yeah, so there's multiple different labels out there.
Okay.
So you got like Sony Music, Universal, Warner Brothers.
Okay.
Labels like guys like Brad Paisley signed with early on that were called Arista. Like labels are kind of their own private companies that they have what's called A&R reps, artist and relation reps, and essentially their jobs are to take artists and promote them, obviously for profit.
Gotcha.
They're a business; they want to make money, and so there's a lot of strategies that go along with it. It's probably no different than like if you work for a company.
Okay.
So for instance, like in the mortgage industry, like this is Advantage Mortgage. We have a way of running things and operating things
Right.
in comparison to other mortgage companies.
Right.
So that's kind of the idea that you can think about it, is that it's all the same industries, but it's different companies running things a little bit differently.
So are they helping you record your music and then they're marketing it for you or helping you with that? Is that a correct assumption, or are you still recording it?
So it kind of depends.
Okay.
Most of the time, again, this is from what I understand, most of the time is that if a label has an artist, the way kind of things operate, if the artist isn't writing their own stuff, is there'll be songwriters in the industry that are writing songs, and they'll pitch them to a publisher. And so, and there's songwriters in Nashville that actually have publishing contracts. And so what that is like, you need to write X amount of songs, create the demos, send it to, and basically the publishers take a listen and then they say, okay, this is awesome. And then they go to the label and pitch those songs and say, hey, do you like this song? And what the labels will do will go, okay, well, either no, cut it off, or they go, we're going to hold this because it's great, but we don't have anybody.
Oh.
Or number 3, we have an artist that's very interested. Let us share this song.
Yeah.
And then that artist will listen to it and they'll go, cool, I want to cut it. And that's considered an album cut, right?
Gotcha.
And then out of that determines if I'm going to release this as a radio single. And so that's kind of how that process works. So there's a lot of gatekeeper. There's a lot of process that happens. And so a lot of times artists will then have their labels contract out to production people that will actually do songs. And sometimes it's not always the same person doing the entire album. Sometimes they'll do a couple singles with one person, et cetera, et cetera. But yeah, sometimes they'll pay for it. Other times you got guys like Al City who did their own production in their living room.
Okay.
So I think it just depends on the quality of work that you can do on the production side that kind of determines that. So if you're an artist that actually can do really good production would be considered radio ready,
Yep.
You can actually save a lot of money and be more valuable.
Going through all those steps with a label,
Yeah.
a Christian song, getting back to the other question, like a Christian song, a worship song, might not make it through that many gatekeepers at a label.
It's the same process. And because it depends on like what you're writing for. And so like, for instance, if you got a Christian artist like Chris Tomlin, let's say you want to pitch a song, you have to write something that actually aligns with, the style of music that he plays. And so like if you're writing a song for Blake Shelton or you're writing a song for, it's it's very stylistic. But then
Yeah.
you have stories, and again, this is why I say that I'm sticking with my lane and going for it, even if it's maybe not necessarily popular to start with. You have songs that Dave Barnes wrote, which is God Gave Me You,
Yep.
and it was a big hit on Christian radio, and it was a love song to his wife. And it's like, okay, well, there's a love song to his wife that made it on Christian radio. Blake
Yeah.
Shelton hears it, and he wants to cut it. And you sit there and go like, man, that's interesting how that worked.
Yeah.
And also, it depends on your connections and who you're friends with. Again, we kind of talked about that earlier. It's like who you know. Another big process of making it in the industry is serving people. And it's if you're able to show up and show your consistency and reliability, and they know you're a good person, and you have a lot more opportunities than somebody that just randomly shows up and says, here's my single.
Yeah.
These guys get pitched thousands of songs a
Yep.
day. There's an oversaturation of stuff. And so it's very much a process. Like if you want to do the process, you want to go the corporate route, it's going to be way different than if you build authentic relationships,
Yep.
stick with the giftings God gives you. And one of my favorite people that I met in Nashville was a gal named Stacy Wilbur. And she's at Tim Publishing now, which is Chris Tomlin's label.
Okay.
And one of the things that she said when I was in Nashville, it was for a songwriting camp, basically. And one of the things that she said is bloom where you're planted. And what I love about that is so many people think like, oh, I need to go to Nashville and make it big.
Right.
And there's something to
Right.
be said about going to a town where it's happening.
Right.
But there's also something to be said about when you bloom where you're planted, the support and foundation that you build can sometimes boost you past being oversaturated in a big lake
Yeah.
with a bunch of fish.
Yep. It's interesting that you say that, like, even in the music industry, to show up to somebody and provide value. Like, I think that is like such an overlooked,
Yeah.
almost a superpower, right? Is everybody has the person or has a job that they want to do, but they're just, I guess, even for me, like a certain point of or a certain part of my life, I just kind of expected to get a job like that instead of like putting in the time, providing value, actually showing somebody that I could provide them value. I think for anybody that's looking to work at a certain job in a certain industry is learn how you can provide value. I've heard that from business owners, and I've seen that for myself, and that essentially is key to doing any type of business, is to learn how to provide value. There's the whole music industry, labels, that sort of thing. What about just doing it independent?
Yeah. So that's what I am currently. So one of the
Okay.
things that I wanted to do is I'll give you this story too. So I got to meet an amazing guy also in Nashville. Again, I have no idea why I ended up meeting these people because I did not deserve to be there at all.
Okay.
I like to credit it to God and his doors opening
Yeah.
in a way. And again, ironically, I met these people, well, excuse me, unironically, I met these people through my service in Salem, Oregon. So to give you an idea, like
Oh.
I would serve with like Young Life. I would serve at these camps, play music, and
Yep.
then a buddy at Young Life moves to Nashville, and then I ask him, "Hey, do you know anybody?" And he's like, "Yeah, meet this guy
Yeah.
named Nick Beret." And I get his phone number, and I'm on West Salem. I'm out in West Salem in my apartment, and on the phone with this guy saying, "Hey, I want to come to Nashville and kind of just learn the industry, figure it out." And turns out this is the manager for Casting Crowns.
Oh wow.
And so I'm like, what in the world? And I met this guy through playing at Camp Aldersgate in Salem, Oregon. And again, the bloom where you planted thing is so important because people see your heart and why you're there and why you do it. And
Yeah.
next thing you know, when you ask, like, hey, I'd love to take a look at this. And then it's like, oh wow, you've been serving. Yeah, no doubt. I love your heart. I want to see you succeed. Let me connect you. And so I meet with Nick Beret, and I remember him telling me something that was so engraving. Like literally, I've had these moments of people telling me this stuff. Nick Beret told me, write your story. So there's bloom where you're planted, and write your story.
Okay.
And excuse me, it was let God write your story. And what he meant by that is not everybody's story is going to be the same.
Right.
And so if you try to replicate something, sure, you can do it. But at the same time, there's something about allowing God to write stories And when you take a look at entrepreneurialism, like companies and processes had a moment in their time where they weren't actually a process that existed.
Right.
And so when I was taking a look at how I wanted to design my career, one of the things I wanted to do is I wanted to be able to create leverage and not just be a puppet is kind of the idea. And so what I did is when I got really serious about kind of, okay, I want to really pursue this music business thing, I wanted to be an independent artist.
Okay.
But I didn't want to just be a sole proprietorship. So I actually registered with the state of Oregon to become a limited liability company. And it's a single entity, so it runs like a sole proprietorship. But I wanted to have a company entity and be able to track that and be able to have success with it and really take all the lessons that I learned over a decade's worth of experience in business and translate it.
Yeah.
And the goal with that is if I can be successful as an independent artist, then if I have the opportunity to talk with a label, I don't necessarily need the label. And the reason why I want to pursue that route is because I don't desire fame.
Okay.
If that makes sense. I don't want to sell my soul for fame. I desire to just do the craft. I love the craft. I love writing. I love production. I love singing for people. I love impacting people. I don't need to be known global wide. Right. And so if I get an opportunity to partner with a label at any time, I'd love to be able to say like, hey, I'm bringing X amount to the table financially. This is how successful my business is. I just want to take it to the next level. What type of partnership can we look at?
Yeah.
That's how I want to do it. And if they say, well, we have tons of people that we can partner with, well, okay, well, I'll just continue doing it.
Right.
And for me, the hardest part about being an independent artist is just simply this. One, you're running a show.
Yep.
You're a business owner. You don't have a manager and people that are you don't have a 40, 50 person team to start.
Right.
So a lot of the stuff that you do is contract work. A lot of it is your work. A lot of it is your connections. And you don't have as big of a money pot to draw from for like marketing and radio promotion and all these things. Problem is that most of the time when you go to a label and you do those things, it's essentially a loan. And so it's like you can spend the money, but at the same time, it's like I'd much rather get to a point where I grow it grassroots and organically. Okay. It'll face its own challenges, but now I have control of my art. I have control of my work. I have control of my hours. I have a family at home. I don't want to tour 150 dates out of the year. I'd love to tour 30 if we got to that point.
Okay.
And just really high quality venues that we can go and connect with people. I want to be able to have control of what I do. And by control, I don't mean every single process, but I want to be in control of my art, my schedule, and those concepts because my number one value in my life is being there with my family.
Okay.
So that's kind of the idea of the independent artist world.
Yeah. I kind of wondered about that. I know it's probably a lot harder to get your work out there if you're an independent artist, I would assume.
Yes.
But, there's people on YouTube, there's people on social media that I don't know, I guess it's kind of a flex for them. I don't know if you know
I do know the term flex.
I don't know. No, I wasn't going to say that. Oh. I don't know. How would you say? I get a little self-conscious about my Spotify playlists. But one of the artists that I enjoy listening to is a rap artist named Tom McDonald. Yeah. I don't know if you know him.
I do know Tom McDonald. I don't know him personally, but I know of his music.
Of his music, yeah. And he's an inspiration just because, he's recording his own music, and his girlfriend is making all the music videos, and they're putting out music, and it is getting out to a lot of people. He's been very, very successful, but he's independent.
Yeah.
And he likes to flex that. You take all of these artists with these big old teams and all of this marketing and stuff like that, and he has, for a day or two, topped them, right?
Yeah.
And so I just wondered, I don't know the amount of difficulty it is to be an independent artist, but I didn't know if that was appealing to you or not. But
I love it because I tend to be a stinker in regards to I love trying to do things that people tell me I can't.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
It's a challenge because it for me, and I'm speaking on my behalf.
Okay.
Because I want to make sure I reiterate and I'm very clear that Like people that want to do just your basic 9 to 5 and provide for family. Like there's nothing wrong with that at all.
Right.
Right. I just wanted to figure out other ways to do it. I feel like I have that entrepreneurial spirit where it's like, man, there's got to be better ways.
Yeah.
And for me, the independent route is fun because as much as I would love to get to a point at some point where I just have people saying like, hey, here's your gig schedule, go to your rehearsal. Like I'd love to get to that point where, but I'd love to build that company.
Yeah.
I'd love to get to a point where, if I ever do get to partner with a major label at any point in time, that they're hiring my company, that they're a part of it, that it's a different type of contract. Like I'd love to get to a point where it's like, yeah, okay, cool. Well, they want us here. Here's our schedule. And I can say, hey, this person works for Justin White Entertainment, LLC. At that point, it wouldn't be a single entity LLC, but I'd love to get to a point where I can have my own crew.
Yeah.
Guys that I trust, guys that, are in the trenches that like believe in what I do. And that's what I would love to create. And just because it's not only is it a challenge, I love the idea of the challenge and succeeding. And trust me, I've failed so many times. I've hit my face so many times. But I mean, it's also kind of fun because you learn that when you hit your face enough times and you get up, you all of a sudden realize it's not like I stopped moving forward.
Right.
I just tripped and fell on my face and learned a harder lesson, had to bandage up some stuff. But I just like I just love the concept of it. Like it's just really nice.
I've heard this from other people. I mean, I would somewhat agree with it, but there's this stigma with Christian music being corny, 5 years, 10 years behind the times, stuff like that. What would you say to that?
I personally, well, let me put it this way. How do I explain this well? I think there's a time and place and a context for some of those quote unquote corny songs.
Okay.
I think of the song's Waves of Mercy, right? Waves of mercy, waves of grace. Super corny song. But in a context of singing it at youth group, it's so fun because you have hand motions. It's hilarious. Like there's a reason why there's certain songs that are written. You asked me kind of one of those icebreaker questions earlier about like pineapple on a pizza. I think it's context, right?
Okay.
And so like when it comes to faith early on, like when people accept Christ, it even talks about this in scripture, you get to milk and potatoes later on, or you get to potatoes later on, but you start off with milk. You start off with this concept of understanding things. It's like when you're first a kid, you're not learning about tax code.
Right.
You're not going to look at your 7-year-old and be like, all right, son, let's sit down and like talk about taxes,
Talk about dependence.
Right, exactly. And so I think there's a context to that stuff. I mean, and so I think, there are definitely some songs that are corny.
Okay.
What I would like to challenge, though, is I think also at the same time Christian radio is that a lot of times they play it safe because they want to be encouraging. That's kind of their brand. That's how they make money. That's their audience. Their audience comes to their shows and tunes into their morning because what they want is encouragement. Okay. They want something positive to listen to get them away from what they're dealing with on a day-to-day basis. I think there's an absolute purpose for that. The challenge I have with it is that if it stops there, then where are they going for all their other stuff?
Right.
You know what I mean? And so
it's like where's the steak and potatoes?
Where's the steak and potatoes? And I think that's kind of, and it's the same thing with like churches that preach certain messages all the time. And again, there's a place and time, there's a body for it, and I'm not dogging it, but I think there's this concept of, I think as the church as a whole, I think there's a challenge that we face that there's a lot more content in the Bible worth diving into. And there's a lot more rawness and there's a lot more reality of what life is like. I call it the, without getting banned for saying this, I call it the Disney effect. And what I mean by that is when you go to Disneyland, you're not seeing the operations, right? You're seeing everything on the production and you're seeing the fun stuff, the enjoyable, because it's the experience.
Right.
But there's a lot of stuff that it takes to make that happen, right? When you look at scripture and you look at the Bible, everybody knows about Jesus, right? And Jesus made it very clear. He says, love your God with all your heart, mind, and soul, and love your neighbor as yourself, and all these things will follow when talking about the law, right? Well, then you dive into the Ten Commandments and Leviticus and all the stuff that dives in, all the hot topic items of today's world, like what is a sin, all these concepts, and there's all these details. And then they just stop. on either end. It's either, here it is, stop, cool, sweet, awesome. We can just live life fluently. Paul said, all things permissible, not all things beneficial.
Right.
Or on the flip end, they go, these are all sins, you're a sinner, and it's like, and they stop there. Like, man, there's so much more content around all of these stories and why these things are written and why this matters. And I think if you just stop at certain areas, you're doing a disservice in regards to the full, complete understanding of what's actually being communicated.
Okay.
And what I mean by that is that if you can dive into songs that talk about love, everybody says like, oh man, that's a love song, for Christian radio. Well, have you read Song of Solomon? That's pretty graphic. Or it's like talking about addictions and like sickness and all these things and like hardship. Well, we want to be encouraging. Well, goodness sakes, did you hear about how Jesus healed the lepers?
Yeah.
What about the sickness? Yeah. Or what about violence, right? Everybody talks about like pain in the world, pain in the streets, like all these different concepts. And we talked about the ministry to it, but what about the collaboration of understanding what people are going through? I always joke, like if you released the Psalms in today's context as corporate worship, it would be like, what is this?
Yeah.
But you read through the Psalms and you read through Proverbs, and like everybody talks about King Solomon being the most wise king. Oh man, Proverbs so wise. Well, did you look at his lifestyle? Like it's crazy. Like there's just so much context, and I think us as the human race, and it's not just Christianity, I think it's in a lot of things, I think we stop. And it's like, man, there's so much more to be dove into. I always like when somebody gets on me for having like a glass of wine, how dare you drink alcohol?
Yeah,
Jesus turned water into wine. I'm pretty sure the disciples partook in that wine. I mean, that's an assumption. It was a party at a wedding,
Right.
It talks about in the Bible not to be drunk.
Yep.
And that's the concept. And then you dive even farther into weak and strong spirits that Paul talks about. And anyways, long story short, coming back to what it is, part of the reason I want to write about life is that I want to create this atmosphere. Like I'm going to write some cheesy, corny songs that are radio appropriate. I absolutely will. Because that's also my heart too. I love going back to the roots of the milk of when I was first knew the Lord, and I was like, man, this is so fun. I had an innocent brain. I was 7th grade. Like it was just like I had no concept of the struggles of the world. Right. Now that I'm older, though, I've experienced life and I have a better perspective and I've got more experience to learn. I'm going to write about those experiences.
Right.
I want to write the authenticity about my life.
Right.
I want to write about the mistakes I've made. I want to write about the things that I've enjoyed. I want to write about the stuff that I've experienced and then tune it back to those corny songs saying Jesus hasn't changed.
Right.
He's the same.
Yep.
That's still there.
Yep.
This stuff is still sin. It causes problems for people. Like it can cause issues. I also it's okay to write about going to camp and cracking a beer with a buddy and enjoying it around a campfire and telling stories and reminiscing about life and ministry. It's, and I know I'll get dogged for that, but I'm learning to lean into that because I'm seeing it as a full experience.
Yeah.
And, I understand some radio stations will not play me. I'm okay with it because I want people to hear my heart, and I want people when they listen to my music to know this is who I am.
Yeah.
That I'm equally as human as this person is, and I equally believe in Christ who died on a crossroads again to save me.
Yeah.
And I want to love people. I want to share the truth, and I want to fellowship with people.
Yeah.
I don't want to sit there and just beat somebody over the head because, it's like it's Isaiah talks about it. Not one person is good, not a single one. Even our best deeds are like filthy rags. That's a hard one to swallow. So coming back to you, I wish from the church's perspective and from everything else, and it feels like it's going this route. And I'm not condoning doing like weird stuff. Like that's not what I'm saying.
Right.
But what I'm saying is I think being able to dive in deeper and understanding it and, people reading the word and me writing more depth about life, I think is a betterment for everybody involved because it teaches people how to handle life. And I'm kind of on a ramble, but if you go your entire life just like living only on milk, what are you going to do when you run into a situation where tragedy happens?
Yeah.
And I'm talking just like a death of a family member, but like some of the most horrific things that happen on a day-to-day basis on this planet.
Yeah.
Because there's a lot of evil in the world.
Oh, for sure.
And there's a lot of stuff that we're very blinded to because we live in a country that, I mean, outside of social media is pretty safe
Right.
for the most part. Like, I mean, we have our challenges and our problems and our crime, sure, so does everywhere else, but we're not a third world country.
Right.
We're not dealing with a lot of stuff that's very real. And I think the more that we're exposed to it, the more education that we have around it, I think the better people will be at being able to sit down and have conversations with each other again.
Yeah. And that's actually one of the reasons why I enjoy Tom McDonald's music, is because he talks about his struggle with addictions and just his struggle with life.
Yeah.
And I mean, obviously, I guess I say obviously, but probably most people don't know me. I've never done hard drugs or anything like
Right.
that. But just his struggle with life and trying to make sense of it, and like he brings some spiritual aspects into it. Going to church instead of drinking whiskey, or
Right.
just some of these aspects is just very, very interesting, and I connect with that struggle.
Yeah.
I really do. And it's just it speaks to me in a way that Chris Tomlin never will.
Yeah.
Right? The reason I asked the question about corny Christian music was I just wanted to make sure that you didn't add that to your genre just to make an excuse, just in case you ever write a subpar song.
Right.
Justin.
Oh yeah, that's fair. That's fair. That's totally fair. Yeah, I mean, at that point, I'll just say, like, my co-writers on that song. Just kidding.
Exactly.
No, I agree with you entirely. Like, it's funny how yeah, because and again, but you bring up a really interesting point to that, right? Because, like, the thing about Chris Tomlin music that I love is, like, it's designed for corporate worship.
Yep.
That's why he writes. Like,
Yep.
and it's perfect. I sing his songs all the time on Sunday morning at church.
Yep.
It's designed for a specific purpose. That's his calling. But I think you touch on something that's really interesting is, when you write a subpar song, so many people are afraid of that. Like, what if I release this and it sucks? Yeah. So here's the third, pillar of what I learned. So this guy's a legit friend to me, and he was actually a big influence on why I ended up going to work for Jordan Keck. Because when I was in the middle of making that decision, I actually got on the phone with him, and he's my buddy Seth Mosley. So he's at Full Circle Music. He actually wrote and produced one of Tim McGraw's songs, which is really cool. Hold on to it. And Seth is he's a very humble person. You wouldn't know that he's won Grammys. You wouldn't know that he's written and produced with some of the bigger names in Christian music and starting to do stuff now in the country world. But his heart is giving back to people. So he has this group called Song Chasers, and he really helps giving educations to young, aspiring, independent songwriters and singers. And one of his mottos is "Dare to Suck."
Yeah.
And the idea behind it is, a human being on a day-to-day basis, even a weekly basis, you are not going to be firing on 100%.
Right.
You'll have days that you are. I love Tim McGraw. He did an interview that I found really, really fascinating. His song, it was Standing Room Only. He has a line in there, and I remember listening to this interview on Instagram, and he talked about, there's a line in there, every now and then I catch a thunderbolt. And his statement in his interview that he said that I found fascinating was, there's days where I'm just off on stage. I feel like everything, but every now and then we have a day where just everything's working. And you touch on that point where a lot of times we're so afraid of that I know you're joking, but like when we have something that goes wrong or we did something wrong, we go, oh man, I'm just going to make an excuse for it. If I sin and I hurt somebody, I'm just going to make an excuse for it. Instead of saying, you know what? I own that. I made a mistake.
Yep.
That was not my best work.
Right.
You know what? I'm going to learn from it. I'm going to scrap it, forget me bucket. Yep. And you know what? I'm going to get to work on making this right. I'm going to learn from that. Why did this song, if I wrote this and it did not connect with people, I wrote this and it did not work. Why? Yep. What's the why behind why it didn't work? Yep. Was it timing? Was it production? Was it lyrics? Was it melodics? And you can spend time diagnosing it and dissecting it and never moving forward. But again, it's that fall on your face and get back up and move forward. You learn from it, you shake it off, and you get back to work.
Yeah.
In the mortgage world, talking with Jordan, I mean, we had a pretty rough economy happen a couple of years ago. Things changed dramatically, and not as many deals were coming in. So we had two ways to go about it, right? And so we had a conversation that we could have where it's like, oh my gosh, panic, what's going on? Oh my gosh, what's happening? Or we go, okay, this is the reality of what we're facing. This is the nature of it. What can we do to bring value right now? And so we switched to education and how do we learn about what's going on and help people understand it better. And we dove into that. And that's primarily why we're successful right now, is that we pivoted and we said, okay, how are we going to take something that's bad and what are we going to do to make the best of it?
Yeah.
Because you can't control your circumstances, but you can control your mentality on how you're going to handle it.
Yeah.
How you're going to adjust to it. How you're going to audible. I mean, we even think about this interview, like,
Yeah.
standing here, like the specific place we were supposed to meet didn't work out, and now all of a sudden we had to pivot, and
Yeah.
we could have just said, "Oh, bump it, we're done."
Right.
But no, it's like, no, let's figure it out. And
Let's figure it out.
go figure. It's Jordan Keck's office.
That's awesome.
But I think you bring up a good point that I think entrepreneurs and run into this constantly. I think the difference between somebody who's successful and not successful in entrepreneurialism is the ability to push through failure.
Okay.
And the reason why I say that is I don't believe a failure is a failure unless you don't lose from it, if you don't learn from it. You know, a failure is only a failure if you don't learn from it.
Right.
Because if you fall on your face, something didn't work, and you learned why it didn't work, and then the next time you did it, it was successful.
Yeah.
Was that a failure?
No.
No, it wasn't. If you release a song and you're like, man, this isn't for radio. This is terrible. This isn't going to work. Okay, well, what is? This. Okay, my next song. Okay, how can I rewrite this, keeping the same content, but make it radio friendly?
Yeah.
All of a sudden now it's on radio. The nugget of knowledge is so important in everything that we do.
Right. And I think it's important to build on that. I think it's important to just, set your eyes on the goal and take a step towards the goal.
Yes.
If you fall on your face, pick yourself back up, figure out why, learn, and keep moving forward. Just listening to your story, you're in Nashville and you're meeting these people that you think are just like way out of your league. It's like you're there, you are working toward a goal. And when you do that, you are going to meet people, you are going to make progress on your goals. I've found that like just getting out and doing stuff, doing what you love, even if it's for free, even if you're not getting paid, there's no promise of promotion or anything like that. Just getting out and meeting people and doing things. Ultimately, like it just always seems to move you just one step closer to your goal. You're going to meet somebody. You're going to learn something. It's just always a benefit to get out and to do. Forrest Frank. You know Forrest Frank?
I do not know.
The guy that wrote About to Have a Good Day.
Oh, yeah. Yes, I do know. Okay, I just didn't know the name. I know the song.
I listened to an interview that he did, and he said that, everybody sees his music, and he's had some big successes recently. Really, really got popular on like Instagram, and like people are using his music for audio on Instagram a lot. And, he said that people see that and they're like, wow, this guy just like blew up overnight.
Yeah.
He said those songs that get popular on Instagram, those those come about every 12 to 13 songs that he writes. And so between song to song that goes viral, gets popular, he's writing 10 or 11 songs in between there that nobody ever sees.
Yeah.
Right? And to me, that was amazing. We see music artists, we see, movie stars, we see all of this glamour and like the performance is just great and like we love it. And we're just like, these people are so talented, but in the background, they're working their butts off.
Yeah.
And to me, that was just so amazing. It was amazing to hear that. That's very inspiring for me.
Yeah.
But
what do they say? It's only takes 15 years to become an overnight success.
yeah.
It's.
Well, you're about there. You're about there.
Close. Yeah. It's year 15. But it's funny because I remember the publishers in Nashville talked about you need 1,000 songs written before you're even ready to even have a conversation, really.
Wow.
And part of it is, I've talked to Jordan about this. Building a company and having success, everybody wants to jump into things. It's always funny because, like, if you tell somebody, hey, you can make 6 figures in this sales job,
Okay.
but the first year and a half, you're going to make nothing. Are you going to take the job, or are you going to take 30,000 a year, 9 to 5?
That's a good question.
And it's a risk, and I get people have needs, but there's a reality to consistency
Yeah.
and doing the grind and building a brand, building a relationship. That's not something that happens overnight. I equate it to farming.
Yeah.
You can't just throw a seed in the ground and be like, oh, it's gonna be corn tomorrow.
Right.
It takes a while. You have to do a lot of stuff to it. It's seasons, it's concepts, it's timing. Like there's so much that goes into it. And I think a lot of times people, especially when it comes to marketing, when you see a successful person, you're like, wow, that just happened.
Yeah.
Well, no, it didn't. If you look at the actual history of it, there's a lot of things that went right. Anybody who's a somebody was a nobody at one point.
Right.
Unless they came with like rich family who was already a somebody, then it's a different conversation. But that's kings and queens of England.
Yeah.
Like there's definitely a born into it concept, but there's this idea of the grind that a lot of people just are afraid of or don't want to do the work.
Yeah.
And I don't mean that insulting, but it's like it takes time, it takes relationships, it takes building it. And the thing is that you can grind for 10 years, and then if you have burned a bridge with somebody, or you think you're too good, or you hurt somebody, that eradicates a decade. And I think a lot of times people, that if they get into it for the money,
Yeah.
it's short-sighted. It's going to fall apart.
Yeah.
If they get in it for the fame, it's not going to be fulfilling.
Yeah.
You're going to sell your soul. You're going to do all these things. If you get in it because you love to do it, then the grind's not as grinding.
Right.
Now you enjoy the grind. You enjoy the process because you're doing what you were designed to do and what you're passionate about doing.
Yeah.
And so it goes back to a philosopher that I love, Simon Sinek. What is your why? Why do you do it? Why is it that you do it?
Yeah.
I get to speak at the university I went to, and I got to teach in some personal selling classes.
Okay.
And the concept behind it is, how do you sell yourself to be able to get a job in business? And I'll ask you the same question, and anybody listening to this podcast, is the very first question that I have is, when have you started your sales career? When do you start it?
That's a very good question. What do you consider selling? I mean, I've heard some sales teachers say that like everybody's selling something.
Yeah. I mean, it's true. But my specific question is, regardless of what you're selling, regardless of where you're working, when do you start your sales career?
I don't even know the answer to that.
My opinion, probably 7th grade.
Okay.
And the reason why I say that, and again, it's my philosophy,
Yeah.
but when you get to a point where people look at you and view your reputation based off your decisions, you're building connections with people from that very start. When you're a kid, it's just like you're a kid. But when you start getting to those age where people start having expectations of, are you developing responsibility? Who are you?
Yeah.
What type of person you are? As you grow, if you are connecting with people in high school, getting in grades, making relationships, like building relationships with people. Then you go to college and you're building relationships with professors and all these people. And then you go into your career and you're doing the same thing. And everywhere you go, you do the best of your capability. You serve people. You do a great job. You have now developed a social network.
Yeah.
And whether you know it or not. And what I mean by that is that there was times where, when I was a petroleum transfer technician at Texaco in high school, I pumped gas. But
What'd you call it?
A petroleum transfer technician. It was a PTT. I went to Pleasant Hill High School, so I have a PhD too. But the concept is, the person that hired me at Texaco was my next door neighbor. They owned the station. I needed a job. I called them. I got a job. Well, would they have hired me if they didn't know that I was a neighbor? As some punk freshman kid? I mean, probably it was a gas station. But I mean, I did the best I could.
Yep.
In everything I did. I restocked shelves. I swept. I took care of everything. I did a great job with that. Then, fast forward, 10 years later, I'm with Jordan Keck. I contact the person that runs that gas station, Linda, and I say, hey, I'm in this job. Do you know anybody? And she connects me with a real estate agent that gets connected with Jordan.
Yeah.
And it's like, that's just one example of as you live your life and you do these things, people are watching.
Right.
And so often, like, we get caught up in the product, we get caught up in the social movement, we get caught up in whatever we're doing, that we're forgetting, like, in the end of the day, it comes all the way back to, let's say, the milk, right? Love
Yep.
God with all your heart, mind, and soul. Love your people how you'd want to be treated.
Yep.
How would you want to be treated by somebody? And it's so fascinating to me when I see that. And I think a lot of people, they get the cart in front of the horse. I truly believe if you want to be successful in whatever you do, whether it's music, mortgage, promotions, whatever it is, absolutely hone your craft, love what you do,
Yep.
but understand that's not the only piece of the puzzle.
Yeah.
Your relationships matter, your connections matter. Somebody didn't just walk in one day and said, like, I'm just going to do this, and it happened. He had a team around him.
Right. So what is the most useful skill you would say when it comes to starting a mortgage office, starting a music career, starting a other small business? What would be the most useful skill, you think, or in your experience? Is that being good at sales? Is it relationships? What exactly should somebody focus on if they want to start something?
Humility.
Humility?
Yeah. Which is interesting to say in an industry that you have to self-promote.
Right, right.
It's kind of ironic saying it, but you're not the biggest fish. I think
Okay.
understanding that even if you succeed, it's also not about you. Even though your name's on it, even though you're taking pictures of yourself and enjoying those things, like there's a concept of it because in the music industry, you are the product, which makes it kind of interesting.
Yeah.
It's kind of a weird blend. But in the end of the day, what you're doing is a service for people. What you're doing is a service to other people. If you're in the mortgage industry, one of the things Jordan talks about consistently is his why
Yep.
is to help people get into better situations financially. In the
Okay.
mortgage industry, you have a fiduciary duty to take care of your clients. It's not about getting in and making a lot of money.
Right.
It's not about status. Oh, I'm the number one lender in the state of where I'm the number one. I'm number this. I'm the best. Those are all great. Accolades come. The joke is the Grammy makes a really good doorstop. But in the end of the day, the rewards are secondary, and the success is secondary to the action of what you're doing. And that takes real humility in order to understand that. It takes humility to sit down and go, I'm going to practice for 2 hours and try to figure out how to do this line.
Yeah.
It takes real humility to say, I'm going to show up to a rehearsal even though I'm not getting paid.
Yeah.
It takes real humility to say, hey, I'm going to connect with these people without the expectation of money in return. It takes real humility to say, this person can't qualify right now, but I'm still going to help them.
Oh.
It takes real humility to say, you know what, I'm doing this gig. I only get 15 minutes on the stage. I'm going to honor that and only do 2 songs.
Yeah.
I'm going to make sure that I keep this production rolling. And so I'm not going to take 30 minutes. Oh, they should play my music. I'm on this stage. That's crap. You're not on that stage because of you. You're on that stage because of the festival. That's their gig. You're a part of it. As a real estate agent who's looking for a partner with a lender, you don't look at that real estate agent and go, oh, you're just a referral partner to me.
Yeah.
If you do that, you're going to lose the business because all it is transactional now.
Right.
And if you create transactional relationships, those transactional relationships, there's nothing.
Right.
Now you are replaceable because how many people are transactional? In comparison to saying, as a real estate agent, man, let's hear about your why. Why do you do what you do? What got you into real estate, right? Okay, cool. Oh, you have a team? That's amazing. Are you the principal broker? Are you like all these things? Like, awesome. What are some of the things that you struggle with on a day-to-day basis? What are your challenges? All of a sudden now it's like, oh, sweet. Well, let's partner. How can we help you? Here's some processes that work for our team. If you need a call, if you have any questions about this, or, oh man, we have these new laws that are coming in on the mortgage side. Man, this is probably overwhelming, because you're dealing with all your real estate stuff, your transactions. Well, if you have questions, talk with us. If you have a question about this, we're here for you. You don't have to pay for it. If you're meeting with somebody early on, right, we just had this situation the other day where it's like, Jordan and I have talked about this consistently where it's like, it's sad to me when people feel like they are wasting your time with having a conversation.
Oh.
And it's like, you're not. Because
Yeah.
if your why aligns, if you have humility in why you do something, it doesn't matter. Because you're going to meet with somebody and say, you know what, my why is to help serve
Yeah.
and get somebody to a better situation. So if you're interested in buying a home, call, get educated at least. Even if
Yeah.
you buy in 4 years, at least you have an education that in 4 years,
Right.
you can prepare yourself for 5 years,
Yeah.
right? Same thing with music, right? Now, there's a fine line between like humility and understanding of your time, right? So if you have a gig where you're opening for Phil Wickham on Tuesday the 24th of May, and then a camp calls and says, hey, we would love you to come out and work Tuesday 24th of May, you know, it's like, okay, well, I can't. So there is a humility in saying no to things, right?
Right.
But there's also humility in understanding, like, man, there's an opportunity. Like, if my why is to serve people, and I have a tour date, right?
Yep.
All of a sudden, I have a week here, and there's a date here where there's a ministry event that's like, man, we would love to have you here. How much? Okay, it's 5,000. Let's say your rate's 30,000, right? And this place can only afford 5,000. I can only do 5,000, but you can make it work, and it works out. Your family's okay with it. It's there. Why not? If you're wise about serving and you haven't lost that, and you have the capacity for it, there's real humility to say, you know what, I'm gonna go do this.
Yeah.
Because I have influence now. Like if you do this, not me right now, currently, but it's like if you have influence at that level to be able to make an impact, why not do it?
Yeah.
And that's kind of the concept. And I know there's reasons why some people will say no to things, but I think humility is so important because I think if you start thinking that you're too big for your britches, you've lost sight of the why and the foundation of what got you there. You lost sight of the 14 years.
It's very interesting to me, the people that I've talked to, and I haven't really, I guess the last interview that I guess I didn't really dig too deep into the why, which I should have. But with several entrepreneurs, business owners that I've talked to, I ask them, why did you start your own business? Why did you buy your own business? And obviously, the money is nice, and they will mention that, but also that is not their ultimate goal. They always seem to have a bigger goal than just making more money, right? They want to do this in the community. They want to help this group of people. They want to do this with their business. That was very inspiring for me, just because it's like, yeah, I mean, more money would be nice sometimes, but that is not what a lot of business owners are actually looking to do. And I think that it sounds like you guys here are the same way. You guys have a goal in mind, and you guys are sticking to that goal, and it's taking you guys longer to maybe reach some of your specific goals, but now you guys have a very, very solid foundation. You've taken care of a lot of people, and now you have a lot of allies in your corner.
Yeah.
Would you be happy to go be an employee at somebody's business?
Would I be happy to be an employee?
Yeah, at this point in life.
Man, I tell you what, I just got done talking about humility, and you just threw a hard curveball on me. It's if I had to, I would. I think it's when you experience this level of entrepreneurialism, it'd be very hard.
Yeah.
And the reason why I say that is that there's a level of it, and there's a level of autonomy, there's a level of growth, and there's a level of being able to see that I can be very efficient in my time and successes. Or if I was just doing, sitting around 9 to 5, I would go nuts. I know for me, I don't think I could do it.
Okay.
I mean, let me rephrase that. I could.
Yeah.
Would I want to initially? Probably not. But if I had to, I would.
So you said you got into partnership with Jordan here. Was Jordan already doing something in the mortgage industry?
Yes. So right after college, he got into mortgage. So he actually he got into mortgage with a company, and then it was about a year and a half into it, he actually switched to owning his own company. And so he had a business partner at the time and did that for all the way up until we connected, and Proper was formed, and then now we're Advantage Mortgage after completely releasing the reins on that thing. So,
Okay. In the beginning, when you joined the team here,
yeah.
Maybe talk a little bit about that. Was there some struggles that you guys had to go through? Was there some adversity that you guys had to overcome? Maybe talk a little bit about joining the team, partnering up
Yeah.
with Jordan.
Well, I mean, the elephant in the room for that first year is like, here you go, you're jumping into this sales role, this business partnership, this management team, and COVID. Good luck.
Oh,
The entire world shut down, man. That was a
and
very big
COVID.
challenge. Like, yeah, it was fascinating to. I keep bumping your light. I'm sorry, but it was challenging to kind of think. I mean, it was no slow pitch softball moment when we first started. I mean, it was very much like, hey, like this is happening, and
Yeah.
so we had to really dive into it. So we faced a lot of challenges early on. I mean, we had a big refi boom. I mean, the amount of deals that were flowing in were ridiculous. Pipelines that were full. And it was slow turn too. So it wasn't like it was like closed, like 2-week turnaround. So we had these pipelines that were massive.
Yep.
And at the same time, trying to, develop processes in a company, hiring on new people and
Yep.
dealing with everything. But, one of the jokes, it's not really a joke, but just one of the statements where, Jordan, as a loan officer, that's his wheelhouse. He loves helping people that way, but he's probably only doing, 30% loan officer work and 70% ownership work.
Yeah.
And so that was really draining. And then plus he had the weight of the world on his shoulders because he was the one that was providing. His production, was providing for the company, the overhead, the employees. And,
Yep.
and then you add in employees and everything that goes on with that and the reality of, conflicting philosophies and concepts and there's just everything that you have to deal with in a business on a consistent basis. I mean, a lot of people don't tell you that. I mean, with business ownership, I mean, it's a lot of, there's nobody there to say, you should do this.
Yep.
You're the coach, you make a call.
Yeah.
It's your calls. And so,
And if you don't show up, nobody else is going to show up for you.
no, not at all. It's not like it's, you go work for a big Fortune 500 company and do a job slot and you've got
Yeah.
multi-millions of dollars already pouring into the funnel,
Right.
It's a different conversation. And so we run into a lot of challenges, but I think the thing that I really liked about that time is that we grew so substantially and we also figured out what we didn't like to do either.
Yeah.
I think that's a big one. I think a lot of times people can say yes to a lot of things and try a lot of things, but there's something about when you find your wheelhouse in things that are life-giving for you, you're
Yeah.
going to be a lot more successful than trying to bend it with stuff that you don't like doing. Now, every job's going to have its thing that you don't like to do that you have to do.
Right.
That's the disciplines and the natures of a career. But at the same time, there's ways to grow your business and there's ways to do things where you can find people with the strengths to do that.
Right.
That's part of the reason. Like my strength is not in numbers and calculations. Jordan is a supercomputer when it comes to that. I don't touch the loans. So he does the loans.
Okay.
I don't touch the loans. But what I love to do is I like to promote other people and help other people grow. I like building pipelines. What most people would fear as public speaking, I enjoy beyond a
Okay.
shadow of a doubt. And so it's like, those are my strengths. That's what gives me life. What
Yeah.
doesn't give me life is sitting behind a desk and figuring out calculations and numbers. And I bang my head against concrete.
Yeah.
And so when Jordan decided to sell proper and merge, I think the cool part is that was also a challenge, trying to figure out the right fit
Right.
to go. Because we also didn't want to do like a corporate America thing.
Right.
We didn't want to get involved with a company that was going to come in and just tell us what to do and like all these things.
Yeah.
And so aligning with Derek Hill at Advantage was so important because he already had the systems in place that we were wanting to develop. He was a broker, just like we were. And at the same time, the way that he does things as a leader is just phenomenal. And he came in, it was a typical thing. He offered everybody a job on our team, which was
Okay.
incredible. So, and he fulfilled every promise that he made to us after 2 years. Everything that he said that he would do, he did.
That's great.
Which is amazing. And the best part was, he was very upfront. He's like, hey, let's run this for 6 months. Let's see if it needs any help and
Yeah.
he let us do our thing for 6 months. And because it was successful, he's like, just let me know what you need.
Yeah.
It wasn't like, hey, we're going to, create this Starbucks. He was very entrepreneurial and it almost feels like, even though it's not, it almost feels like you're a company that's franchised under,
Okay.
and you have the support of an incredible corporate structure and team.
Yeah.
But we get to run our operations almost like a private entity almost,
Yeah.
which is amazing. And so it's really, it's been a good journey, but yeah, there's a lot of challenges, a lot of stressful days, I learned that I don't like management.
Okay.
I like leadership. I don't like management. And there's two distinctively different, territories, And so,
Why is that?
why is that? Let me put it this way. Managers have tasks and they're the ones that make sure all the planks are in place and that everybody's in their stations. Right?
Okay.
If you're on a pirate ship, a manager is the one that's barking orders saying, all the helms on deck, raise the rafts, what are you doing? That's a manager.
Right.
Listening to everybody. The leader is the captain.
Oh, okay.
And the leader is the one that's taking a look and going like, where are we going to go? Which island are we going to go to?
Oh, I see. Yeah.
Not that pirates are a good example, but it's just,
Right.
it's that concept of leaders are the ones that are sitting there going, I'm going to dive in the trenches and I need to empower this team to believe in something.
Yeah.
I need to give influence. For me, with like my music business, I would love to hire managers at some point. Like my booking agent in the music side, he's kind of my manager. He's the one that's calling them on behalf and doing the negotiations on contracts. He's the one that's,
Okay.
He's doing those concepts. If I ever have a team, I'd love to have a manager that's underneath me. That's kind of the guy that, or the girl that says like, hey, like, we need to get these things done.
Yep.
Show up to rehearsal. Show up on time.
Right.
And you need those.
Right.
I don't want to be that person. I want to be the person that visions. I want to have the mental
Yeah.
capacity to say, oh, this is where I want to go. This is what we need to do. Let's make it happen.
So with all of those challenges, the adversity that you guys had when you guys first got started, do you think that you got a college degree, right?
I did, yes.
Did that college degree help you with a lot of those challenges and adversity? Was there knowledge in what you learned in college to help you overcome those things?
This is going to be controversial.
Okay.
Book-wise, no. Class homework, no. Where I learned the most when I was at Corbin wasn't necessarily the books that we read.
Okay.
It was actually the experiences of the professors.
Okay.
And what I mean by that is in the business world, because there's plenty of stuff that we learned, but I mean, it's stuff that you would learn if you're at a job.
Yeah.
You learn it on hand, But the thing that I learned the most on is from the projects that we did with real businesses, the consulting we did with real businesses, and learning what it was actually like. And then also the professors there. I mean, we had Kelly, who was with the FedEx Corporation, and,
Oh, wow.
and she had a lot of success. We had Sean Hussey, who's now at George Fox, but I mean, he was with a lot of companies, IBM, Merrill Lynch. Like he was, we had professors that had incredible experiences that if you met with them outside of the classroom for coffee,
Oh.
and you actually got to build a relationship with them, so much knowledge that nothing, in my opinion, and don't get me wrong, books are great. I'm absolutely books. If you're a believer, you have to read the Bible. You have to understand what you understand. Like you have to
Right.
read and educate yourself. I'm not saying that reading is bad. There's plenty of books that are phenomenal. A lot of the books that I read now, though, are influences from other people's experiences.
Gotcha.
Because you can take something in a book, but until you apply it in real life, you don't connect the two.
Yeah.
And those professors actually taught a lot through the concepts of what they've experienced, how they handled things. Like, because you can learn about, return on investment. That's awesome. All right, now place that ROI. I want you to get a return on investment in negotiating with a marketing guy that says he's going to give you $2,500 of guaranteed profitability in a month, but has zero reputation in the industry. Based on the understanding of a book, that's perfect.
Yeah.
My ROI is going to be $2,500.
Yeah.
What if that guy's a cheat? What if that person has other things in mind? What if that person, it's like all of a sudden now you bring humanity into it and it really muddies up everything.
Right.
And now it's all of a sudden, how did you handle dealing with a disgruntled employee? And if you just are relying on the book, you're going to be like, which page,
Yeah.
which page?
Yeah.
Instead of the experience of going like, man, this person's personality is like this. They react like this. Okay. Don't mean to pause. I'll give you a prime example of this. Sales experience versus concepts, right?
Okay.
There's a term called mirroring. And mirroring is you mirror the person that you're talking with and you match their level of communication because it helps that person feel comfortable. That's the definition, kind of the business definition of what that means. That's in a book. It's called mirroring. Cool. So you understand the concept of it.
Right.
How do you practice it? And so there's a situation where I had a phone call early on when I was working with Jordan, and I called an agent on the phone, and I said, "Hi, insert agent name here. I'm Justin from Proper Lending at the time," and I say, "I would wanted to ask if now's a good time. That person immediately goes, no, now's not a good time. I'm very busy. So in that moment, all of a sudden I'm like, okay, very direct, very short. I'm annoying this person.
Okay.
But I'm not just going to give up because that's not what you do in sales.
Right.
And so I said, okay, well, is there a better time to call back? Well, just tell me what this is. Who are you? Like, what do you want out of this? In that moment, my experience that I learned through 7 years of working at Industrial Finishes, right?
Yep.
Experience, falling on your face, failing, learning, right? Now, out of the book, I knew I got to get straight to the point with this person. It's not somebody that's going to be, this person wants straight to the point. They're probably busy. And so I ask, okay, let me ask you this question. Are you happy with your current lender? No. Why? They never return my calls. Their communication is awful. I go, awesome. If I can tell you that we have incredible communication, do I have a coffee meeting? Yes. Cool. Next Wednesday, down at your place, this location, Starbucks? Yes. Book it. Click. That's how it works. Now, in that moment, you can know about metering, but it's not going to prepare you for that moment of like, how do I handle this? Or how do I handle when somebody's screaming at me?
Right.
And they're mad because they just got the crap kicked out of them because of a tax agent, and they're just taking it out on you, and it has nothing to do with you.
Right.
You know?
But I found for myself when I read about concepts, business concepts, life concepts, in a book, sometimes they go over my head and I forget about them. Something happens to me in life and I'm all of a sudden like, I remember reading about this.
Correct.
So would you say that like some of that book learning is useful?
1,000%.
So that could be useful to learn in college or learn through reading books, educating yourself with that. Book smarts can be useful.
100%.
Or are useful.
And let me be perfectly clear. I may not have communicated this well in the statement, and I want to make sure this. I'm not saying that you shouldn't read books. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is that there's so much knowledge in books, and there's so much knowledge in the communication of it. When you ask specifically about the college aspect of it, I learned more from my first professor's experience than I did the book.
Yeah.
And I think the books that you read entertain those concepts that are written in like marketing strategy books.
Yeah.
But it's through their experiences and lenses that it comes into fruition. Kind of like what you just said earlier when you said, when I experience something in life, it goes back to that concept that I read in the book. That's how I feel when I read something from Simon Sinek, right? Because all of a sudden when he says my why and this and this and this, it takes me back to those concepts and those pieces. But if you just focus on the strategy of those pieces, you become a robot.
Yeah.
Instead of allowing the experience of the things around you to actually take place, the interaction, the relationships, and the building. Because learning is a holistic thing.
Right.
Because you can go to college and you can read a book and you can do the grades and you can do the system perfectly, you can get great grades, and you can have zero success after you graduate. Reading a book isn't going to guarantee your success.
Right.
Now, reading the book and putting into action will. Both work collaboratively together. And it's supposed to be that way.
Yeah.
I don't think it's one or the other.
Yeah.
I think it's a collection of both working together. It's no different than operations and sales trying to work together. Yeah. Every bit of it's important. And yeah, I think to answer your question. So yes, in college I learned more from my professors' experiences, but overall, reading books and doing those things is super important.
All right. Quick want to cover just a few things in the music side of things because, we kind of went from music to mortgages. Now I just want to get just a few things with the music straight now. So somebody that's looking into starting a music career, would you recommend it? Or would you say, go find something else to do?
Oh, no, not at all. Dude, find a job that makes great money. Partner that makes it.
Do you think that your path is the path that people should take? Like, find a career that you can do for a said amount of years. Maybe put your music on the back burner for now, and when you are established, maybe start investing more time into the music career.
You're gonna hate this answer, maybe. Let me explain the first two. The first one, no, because it's a challenging thing.
Yeah.
I mean, it's way easier to get a job, make good money, have a family, work 9 to 5. It's gonna be safer. It's gonna be way safer. Now, if you're dialed to make the effort and you understand what you're getting yourself into, absolutely. There's no greater path. my pathway is one pathway, but it's not going to work for everybody. And the reason why I say that is that it's also highly determinant on the partnerships you have.
Yeah.
I think it goes back to what Nick Brace said, is that you got to let God write your story. Because what I'd say is everybody's situation is different.
Yeah.
You know, some people might come from a family that has plenty of liquid reserve. I mean, if you have that, dive into it. Start your business. Start making connections and just play shows, and make connections right from the start.
Yeah.
Right? If you have the ability to dive full in from the beginning, do it.
Yeah.
Because that's the best way to do it. If you have, connections in the industry from the very early on, let's say you have cousins or anything that are in music, talk with them, shadow them, be a part of it, and rub shoulders with people. Go that route. If you happen to not be from money, you have nothing to lose, just grind. Play live shows, do those things. Just go.
Yeah.
If you're in my situation where you've accumulated debt and you have to pay it and you have responsibilities, you might have to go my route.
Yeah.
My story is my story that God's designed. This is a unique situation that is happening because of the route and the life circumstances that I've taken that started in 7th grade.
Yeah.
So you can learn from my stuff and you can actually absolutely learn from my experiences, but I would say it's going to be impossible to replicate it.
Right.
Because it has to be your story.
Right.
If you're going into entrepreneurialism, it has to be whatever you do because there isn't a cut and dry way of doing it.
Right.
Nobody's going to sit there and go like, here's the road to success, because you can replicate everything that I do to a T and you will not have the same things happen. What I can say that you replicate is all the stuff that is the foundational truths. Be a good person, work hard, build connections, serve others. That's a foundational truth that you can apply no matter what direction you take. The foundational truths are what I would align myself with. That's the goal. I wouldn't replicate what I do. It was miserable. It was hard. It was very frustrating. I had multiple days where I'm like, man, I wish I could just do this. But looking back now, I'm so glad I went through that because it's taught me a lot of lessons.
Why did you keep going?
Because I love the craft.
Okay.
It's been imprinted on me since the very beginning. I tried taking 2 months off of music one time and I went insane.
Really?
I love it. I have so much fun with playing and performing and creating and I love connecting with people. I've had job opportunities that would pay me way more than I make now. And I didn't take them because I wouldn't love what I do. And I would say, don't mistake my frustrations as me not loving what it was. My frustrations were with the process and the details and the logistics that are the pain points of entrepreneurialism.
You've got some shows coming up.
I do,
and
yes.
You're also releasing some music here soon.
Yeah,
right?
I got a full-length album that's actually, we're going to be announcing a drop date for that. And really soon, actually. We're going to be releasing the physical copies in May for the first round of this album.
Okay.
And then the album's going to drop as singles on Spotify. So if people want to come hear the whole album and not wait an entire year to hear every single, they need to come to the shows.
I don't know what it looks like to you.
Yeah.
But I see these, I've got a complete album. That's a win. I've got some gigs that I'm going to be doing this summer. That's a win.
Yeah.
And I think those wins, to me, looking on, it looks like they're very, very, like it's something that you love and it's something that's sweet to you now. And I don't think it would be that meaningful to you if you didn't go through those frustrations. Am I correct in assuming that?
1,000%.
Yeah.
I think you have a better appreciation of it.
Yeah.
It's I think sometimes if you get success too early, you don't get the opportunity. I'm not saying it's bad. I'm just talking about the literal realities of each person's experience. But I would say the thing that I appreciate about having to grind and be frustrated is that it's also given me a lot of content to write about that I can relate to.
Exactly.
I can relate to a lot of people because there was a time that I was living with 9 dudes in a home because I only had $50 in my bank account.
What is this, a frat house?
Pretty much. It was a house. Like, we had to. We had Little Caesars pizzas and, sacks in the fridge, just to make ends meet.
You don't know when you're going to release this music? Not yet?
No official release date yet.
Okay. But sometime in May.
May is the goal.
Okay.
Yeah. We've got the final master. I just listened to the final master. It's 13 tracks, which include 5 songs that are already released. But we got about 9 new ones, which is really going to be exciting. But the full-length album is basically in the final little stages of mixing, and it should be done this week. So once that's dialed and once I get it in the hand, I'll have a release date for the physical album drops. And then my goal and strategy, because of Spotify algorithms, is I'm going to release each song as a single 4 weeks at a time. So every 4 weeks, there'll be a single drop.
All right.
And that's actually how the Spotify algorithm works the best to get on playlists and other things.
Okay.
And so if people want to listen to the album, there'll be single drops that'll be happening. Once I release that date album, you'll see the release of the singles on Spotify.
Okay.
But we'll have the full-length albums for sale at the shows. And so if people want to actually get an early access to it, we'll be playing May 3rd at Mountain View Church in Almsville.
Okay.
And if you want to get a ticket, they're free tickets. And it's at almsville.church/events, and you can register a ticket. And then we'll have another one June 30th at Calvary Chapel. And then we'll also have an Ignite gig on August 25th at Volcano Stadium. It'll be a really fun event, but we'll have CDs and stuff for sale for that date too. It's going to be a festival, which is going to be really fun.
I will link as much of your information, your Spotify, Instagram, TikTok.
Even Jordan Keck too. I love to any links that he has as NMLS. Like if anybody's interested, and he'd be a good lender that can be in your corner for agents, right?
Yeah.
So somebody who's going to take care of you if you're looking to buy your first home, if you're looking to buy your second home. Jordan's just an amazing low pressure dude to talk to.
Yeah.
And so I love to include his stuff.
Yeah, for sure.
And then I can give you all the stuff, my website, my socials.
And you already have some music on Spotify, stuff like that. So
I've got about 11 songs already released, so I got a catalog. So
okay. If people want to go listen, you already got some songs there, and you wrote, how many of these songs did you write?
I have pinned all of them. I've had co-writers on a lot of them too.
Okay.
But I have a lot that are solo writes and a lot that are co-writes. So every single song that I have has me as a songwriter.
On Spotify?
Yeah, on Spotify and also on the new album.
Awesome.
So I am a songwriter too.
So you're not just a performer, you're actually grinding, writing the songs.
These are my songs that I've written.
That's awesome. That's awesome. I think that's about it. Do you have anything else you want to tell the world?
My biggest thing is, in whatever you do, just remember to not forget that you're surrounded by people.
Yep.
And I think that the reality is that we're in very tense times where ideologies and philosophies are just at a war front.
Yeah.
And I get taking a stand on things. I get the nature of it, but it's also how you do it. Mm. And the reason why I say that is that the best way to share information is always through authentic trust in relationships. You got to have conversations with people. You got to show love to people. You got to help people. Your actions are always going to prove louder than words. If you're a believer, you can talk about Jesus all day long, but if your neighbor needs help and you're not there, faith without works is dead. And that's the point of that. Faith, works don't get you into heaven, but works is the thing that's a reflective of the heart of who you carry.
Yeah.
And every action that you do, even anything else, if you're peaceful protesting, if you're doing anything like that, the way you choose to do things absolutely matters.
Yeah.
And truth is not relative in those situations.
Right.
The reality is that you're still dealing with people. You're still dealing with hearts. You're still dealing with people that have unique experiences to themselves. And you have to be sensitive to that. Mm-hmm. And it doesn't mean you have to agree with them. It doesn't mean you have to bend what your philosophies are. But that doesn't give you the right to treat that person like garbage.
Right.
And I think that's the key point. And I think in our society, we've gotten to a point where if you disagree with me, you're horrible. That's not the truth. It isn't the truth. And it shouldn't be the truth. The actual truth. You can live a life a certain way and decide that and completely disagree with somebody else. But to be able to love your neighbor how you'd want to be treated is so stinking important. Because that's how you change lives.
Yeah.
You don't change it through book and doctrine. You change it through action.
I think that's it.
Awesome.
I want to thank everybody for watching the video all the way to the end. This has been The Merchandise Show, where we help you mind your own business. Subscribe here on YouTube or on Spotify, wherever you guys are listening. Follow us on Instagram or TikTok. And just get out there and go start something.